On British Sudanese people, Superwoman Suala shuts down Sly News party gal Kay Burley's lefty agenda.
People who come here, it's not illegal, is it, to come here on a boat?
We've had this discussion before,
yes,
Kay,
we have.
and we disagree. It is illegal to get on a boat, to come here illegally. You don't have a legal permission to be in the United Kingdom.
Get on one of the boats.
So, should the Home Secretary be praised for admitting that Channel migrants are abusing British values? That's our big debate later in the show. Elsewhere tonight, Thomas Markle finds his voice again as Meghan's estranged family prepare to drop explosive truth bombs on the Sussexes.
Dad's deathbed plea to the daughter he lost.
How can I fix this?
So sad. My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, often their unmissable analysis as we count down to the coronation. Then the author of Battle of Brothers and the royal historian behind The Crown, Robert Lacey, speaks out live on that bombshell trailer, Harry's victimhood narrative being blown up by a High Court judge, and so much more. Plus, should Sinn Féin's Northern Ireland leader, Michelle O'Neill, really get a prize coronation invite over the late Queen's bridesmaid, whose father was murdered by the IRA? Edwina Currie, Neil Hamilton and Nina Mishkov do battle on that in The Clash. Also on the way, as Humza Useless hits out at Lord Frost for telling this show that we should reduce Holyrood's power.
Only last week, a senior Tory said the quiet bit out loud. They admitted they want to put devolution in reverse.
So do the separatists need less power, not more? Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie gives his unflinching verdict in Uncancelled. And what musical rendition by the South Korean president sparked this rare moment of self-awareness from Sleepy Joe Biden?
Expect me to sing his song.
제가 노래하는 건 기대하지 마십시오.
Yep, one of the first honest things he's said in some time. As ever, stay tuned too for a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press, and I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel, and wasn't this ridiculously predictable? Of course, the Snivel service knew that they can get the Deputy Prime Minister. Now they're coming for the Health Secretary. Who is next? My digest on exactly what's going on straight after the news headlines at 9 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story tonight on GB News. Sudan's army has agreed to extend its ceasefire for a further 72 hours. It's unclear, though, that the rival paramilitary group in the country has agreed to that. Meanwhile, British forces have evacuated almost 900 people out of the country so far. Rescue efforts, we understand, are continuing. The Foreign Secretary said today it would be potentially impossible to continue with the rescue operation if the truce had ended. The deadline was going to be at 11 o'clock UK time tonight. Well, the government is urging those with British passports still left inside the country to make their way to the airfield as soon as possible. We'll keep tabs on that story for you throughout the night. Here at home, the Royal College of Nursing has been forced to cut short strike action planned for this weekend after the government won a legal challenge today. The High Court ruled part of the 48-hour walkout on Tuesday would be unlawful, as the RCN's 6-month mandate for strike action would have run out the day before. The RCN's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, said the government had lost the trust of nurses and the public. But the Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Health, Maria Caulfield, said she was hopeful negotiations could now continue.
We recognise that every day of strike has an impact on patients. It's outpatients appointments cancelled, tests cancelled, operations cancelled, and absolutely, we don't want to stop the right to strike, but it has to be done in a legal way, and that's why the Secretary of State took the action he did. Hopefully, we can then get people back around the table, particularly the RCN, to try and come to a resolution overall.
Well, more planned strike action now, and the RMT union has announced workers across 14 train operators will walk out on the 13th of May after rejecting their latest pay offer. The General Secretary, Mick Lynch, claimed the rail delivery group had reneged on their original proposal. And earlier, the ASLEF union said its train drivers were planning 3 new strikes across May and June after turning down a 4% pay rise. The action by both unions will impact the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool and the FA Cup final. Detectives searching for the partner of a pregnant teacher who was killed in Glasgow have tonight found a body. Police launched a murder investigation after Morel Sturrock was found dead on Tuesday morning. She was 19 weeks pregnant and her baby did not survive. Police Scotland say the body's yet to be formally identified, but it's believed to be that of her fiancé, David Yates, who was wanted in connection with her murder. The DUP's leader says the government's latest budget for Northern Ireland is playing politics and punishing people. The funding allocation is likely to result in significant real-term cuts to public services. Devolution's currently suspended because the DUP is boycotting power sharing over post-Brexit trade. But the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris says he'll continue to hold talks with leaders in Stormont.
The purpose was not to punish anybody with this budget. The purpose of this budget is to make sure public services can continue in the absence of an executive. Now, I do want to see an executive up and running, and that's why I continue to have talks with DUP representatives, and let's see where they lead to.
That's the latest news for now. I'm back in an hour. Now, Dan.
So I warned it would happen if Fishy Rishi didn't have the political and personal mettle to stand by his Deputy Prime Minister and closest political ally, Dominic Raab. And within a week, literally within a week, the British deep state Civil Service is now colluding with the MSM to force from office the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay. So he's the latest competent minister. They have outrageously branded a bully because he's asking them to do their job and enact government policy with which the woke blob almost certainly disagrees. I'm sure the reason to target Barclay, I'm sure it's nothing to do with the fact the union crusher is taking on the dangerous sweeping the health service, starting with a victory in court today against the RCN, which will stop a 48-hour nurses' strike due to start on Sunday from going ahead. It was The Guardian, no surprises there, who have started this campaign, led by, again, no surprises, its political editor, Pippa Carrera, revealing that, shock horror, Barclay sometimes hauls people over the coals and, this is according to them, generally a bit unpleasant. The Times added the minister could be, quote, difficult and demanding. I mean, who on earth would want a health secretary trying to save our failing NHS to haul his useless department over the coals to try and get action? But sure enough, where The Guardian starts, the rest of the craven anti-Tory MSM piles in.
5 days on from the resignation of Dominic Raab, the Deputy Prime Minister, over his behaviour towards his civil servants, Anushka has details of a complaint against another. How serious are these claims? What have you learned?
Well, myself and my colleague Lucy McDade have been hearing stories from sources in different parts of the health sector over recent weeks regarding to the behaviour of Steve Barclay. People have used words like bullying. Then today, The Guardian came out with a story that suggested that informal concerns had been raised with the most senior civil servant in the department, the permanent secretary.
Steve Barclay, is he a bully?
Absolutely not.
ITV News has heard that there are serious concerns within the Department of Health about Steve Barclay's behaviour. Are you concerned at all that your colleague's behaviour may have fallen short?
Well, Steve Barclay has made a statement in which he has said there have been no complaints made about him.
That hysteria prompted the Health Department to release this statement. The department has not received any formal complaints relating to the behaviour of its ministers. Any complaints relating to ministers or members of staff would be investigated in line with departmental guidance. But this isn't going to end here. Politico's Playbook reported this evening that Barclay might, quote, make unreasonable demands, such as for statistics that don't exist, and then be quite eggy when told they don't exist. Now, let me be very clear to Politico and the other ridiculous Westminster Tory witch hunters, this is not a story. Focus on what matters, for God's sake. So much is going wrong, especially within our health service. But Sunak needs to take responsibility here. He must understand this is the chilling consequence of his decision to let Raab walk the plank last week. Raab was the victim of a deep state plot, aided and abetted by the MSM. And he was right when he warned the bar has been set so dangerously low when it comes to ministers and the activist civil service, who spend more time these days briefing The Guardian than trying to fix the country. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the columnist and media personality Carol McGiffin, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate, top Tory Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. So look, Sean, this is your party that the snivel service, the woke blob, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, are coming for, minister by minister. By all accounts, Steve Barclay is competent. He's trying to do a very difficult job, given the fact that these hard-left unions want strikes every day of the year when the health system is already failing. What needs to be done to stop this from happening?
I think there's so many things to say. I think, firstly, when Rishi allowed Raab to walk, it was said at the time this now makes all ministers vulnerable. Yep. I'm surprised. Even I didn't think it'd only take a week. That's pretty good going. And the other thing is, as well, no complaints were made. So last time this came up, I said, where were senior civil servants? If anybody's abusing someone, I used to work at Number 10. If you blinked at a civil servant wrong, a senior civil servant will come and speak to you. So I'm asking, where are these other senior civil servants? If they're not in the mix, then surely you have to start to think something isn't happening. But the reason, to my mind, is beginning to look like a witch hunt. How comes the Guardian hears first, not your line manager? If you're being abused in any way,
of course,
no matter what,
because there's an agenda, though.
Yeah, exactly. You think you'd come.
But the thing is, I actually don't even care, Carol, if there are official complaints, because now what will happen? Because they've got a playbook for this. What will happen now is they'll put in a whole load of official complaints in a coordinated action to try and force an official investigation. It's ridiculous. It's distracting. It's just pathetic.
It's so tiring.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting because it is, as you say, pathetic. Everything about it is pathetic. The allegations, there are no official allegations, no complaints, and just about people trying to get people to do their jobs. You know what I'm like? I'll question everything, and I'm trying to think, I'm trying to rack my brains as to why this is happening. Why is it happening? Now, if I was really mad, I might say that, maybe Rishi doesn't want them to do their jobs. Maybe this is all part of a big, massive breaking everybody down and stopping people from doing their jobs.
It's starting to feel like we are a one-party state.
Yeah, well, we are. We actually are, because you can put them all together in the...
And what's going to change?
And they're all the same.
And especially if the civil service want to frustrate any change. And we saw that with Liz Truss.
Exactly.
She was out the door because she wanted to make change.
But Rishi's got to man up. If it isn't anything to do with him or his government briefing The Guardian to try and get rid of the people that might be dissenting, who knows, then he really needs to step up. I mean, I don't think he's got it in him. I mean, why did he get rid of Raab? Why? Why? I mean, there was no reason for it. No. It's just... It's nonsense, Dan.
That was pathetic.
And it really is pathetic.
And unfortunately, it was a test of his political mettle, but also his personal character, and he failed on both counts.
Yep.
Amy Nicol, why is the left-wing media just so desperate to pick off ministers one by one now?
I'm not sure that's entirely the case. I think what would help this whole scenario is to stop vilifying the civil service, because they're just professionals trying to do their job.
Do you think they all are?
I think that they deserve a lot of credit with working with ministers, and they are experts in their field who guide the ministers through.
Most of them can't even be bothered to come into the office these days.
No, but this is why I think there might be a bit of a culture clash, because if it's anywhere that understands a work-life balance, it's the civil service. And it's if it's anyone that doesn't, it is the ministers. So the one thing I took from the Dominic Raab report was that he works every day, 7:30 till 10 p.m.
As you should, if you're a government
minister. No one should work that longer hours. So I was like, that's why they're all so bad-tempered.
Okay, so
they need a peloton.
So your solution is basically the ministers should work less and give the civil servants an easier ride?
The ministers should not have such bad tempers because no one wants to work in these.
But Sean, look at this report that came out yesterday, Sean. Look at this report that came out yesterday, Sean. The Foreign Office, currently involved in a crisis, trying to evacuate Brits out of Sudan. In the early days, not doing a fabulous job with that. Half of the Foreign Office are still actually refusing to come in to the office, but doing it from home.
Here's the big problem. The civil service and actions like this, speak to the Guardian before you speak to your Secretary of State, whoever it is, are now putting themselves in the political arena. And people start to ask very different questions of them. I spoke to a civil servant I know, and he was distressed that civil servants are behaving in this way, because he said, we want to be neutral, we don't want to be the story, and these are making us the story. Hold on, in the long end, what's going to happen is people are going to start asking different questions to civil servants. So you've said how they're professionals and how they behave well. That's what most people feel. These stories will change that. And then people will ask, why aren't they in the office? Because I'm in the office.
But there is a theme, isn't there, with ministers? So we had Gavin Williamson saying he wanted to slit someone's throat. That is hardly just a little bit of eye contact.
Do you think he meant that, Amy, or do you think it was a throwaway comment?
I think you should never say that in an office.
I'm afraid
it's
not a theme.
Some of the behaviour of
No.
has been inexcusable.
You've demonstrated what the press are doing. That is not a theme. That is something that Gavin Williamson did.
There does seem to be a culture.
No. That seems to be, and then you're removing people from their jobs, seems to be an evidence or a different thing. Let's be clear, there was no official complaint made against him.
And by the way, if you read the Raab report, it's so blindingly obvious that this bloke is not a bully. He's just got high professional standards.
But it's also blindingly obvious that the civil service, throughout that report, Tolley credits the civil service for being impartial and professional and having bravery for coming forward.
I think you'd fit in very well there because because they are becoming increasingly woke, increasingly lefty. So I think you would do very, very well.
I love a work-life
balance. Well, you'd definitely do well. You would definitely do well. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Karen McGiffin, do stand by. My superstar panel will be with me all evening. But still to come as J.K. Rowling slams Irish Eurovision for cancelling their choreographer because he objected to a jailed trans rapist being described as a woman. Is the left's woke intolerance actually normalising misogyny? Well, Man of the People ex-Corrie star Charlie Lawson is back to have his say on this. But up next in The Clash, we get stuck into some Coronation controversy after Sinn Féin's Northern Ireland leader got a prize seat at the King's Big Day over the late Queen's bridesmaid, whose father, Lord Mountbatten, was murdered by the IRA. But was that really a just decision? Nina Mishkov, Edwina Curry and Neil Hamilton, well, they have very divergent views on this and are going to clash in an unmissable Royal Rumble. What do you think, Dan at gbnews.uk? Vote in our poll at GB News. The countdown to the coronation continues straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lady Colin Campbell is on the way, but it's time now for The Clash. And King Charles's highly anticipated coronation is now just 9 days away, but the official invitation list is causing uproar after the Daily Mail revealed that Sinn Féin's leader in Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill, who comes from a family with links to the IRA, will be attending the ceremony, while Lady Pamela Hicks, the late Queen's bridesmaid, whose father, Lord Mountbatten, was murdered by the IRA, has been cruelly snubbed, less than a year after the Queen's death. Sinn Féin's O'Neill has responded saying, "We are living in a time of great change. I am an Irish Republican. I also recognise there are many people on our island for whom the coronation is a hugely important occasion. I'm committed to being a First Minister for all." What do you think? Is she right? Should Sinn Féin's Northern Ireland leader get a prize seat for the coronation over the late Queen's bridesmaid whose father was murdered by the IRA? Email me on this, dan@gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. But to help you make up your mind, I'm joined by the journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former Tory Minister Edwina Currie, and the leader of the UKIP party, Neil Hamilton. Neil, I'll start with you because you're furious about this, aren't you?
I certainly am. I think it's absolutely grotesque that Lady Pamela has not been invited to the coronation. After all, the last coronation had 8,000 people. This one's going to have only 2. The idea that there isn't room for one other single person in Westminster Abbey is absurd. And if that were the case, that there wasn't room for one other, the idea that Michelle O'Neill should take Lady Pamela's place is utterly grotesque. You know, her family is drenched in the blood of innocent victims of IRA murder and mayhem throughout the 70s, 80s and 90s. Her father was interned because of his importance in the East Tyrone Brigade of the IRA. And yes, maybe now she is genuine in her desire for reconciliation in Northern Ireland, but she has never expressed the slightest regret for the murder of Lord Mountbatten or anybody else. And she's not the First Minister of Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland doesn't have a First Minister at the minute because the DUP will not go back into a power-sharing executive. So there's no reason why she, other than any other leader of a political party in Northern Ireland, should be invited to the coronation.
Nina Mishkov, you disagree?
Well, first of all, I agree with her sentiments, her intentions. Peace has been hard fought and hard won, and it's only holding tenuously. And we've just celebrated 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement, so we know how difficult all of that is. The thing is, we all believe in democracy. And that she has been democratically elected. She is the whatever, you know, of the fact that there isn't a government at Stormont is not her fault. It is the DUP who are holding out. She has been democratic. She and her party have been democratically elected. They are the majority party. And when and if the Stormont MP, Stormont Parliament is reconvened, she is the First Minister designate. And the thing is, at some point, you have to grow up and move forward. The troubles were terrible. I remember, Neil and I, we know, and Edwina, we're all of the same vintage. We all remember how dreadful all that was. And God knows we do not want to go back to that. So you have to move forward. And it only comes from talking, and it only doesn't come from guns.
Well, I want to bring Edwina Curry in on this. Edwina, look, obviously I want to know what you think about Michelle O'Neill. But can I start with Pamela Hicks, Lady Pamela Hicks, because this would have been her third coronation. I'm very surprised by this decision by King Charles. She was incredibly close to the late Queen. Her father was Lord Mountbatten, someone who was a guiding light for Charles. Shouldn't she be there at the very least?
Well, she's 94, God bless her. And the King, I've not entirely been a fan of the King most of his life. I think he's got it right on this. You know, they have big private parties, lunch parties and so on, where lots and lots of minor royals will gather. And I've no doubt she'd be there, whether she would actually enjoy being sat in a wheelchair in the Abbey for 3 solid hours, you know, worried about where the loo is. I'm not sure that's exactly a good idea. Where I think he's got it right is in inviting a large number of ordinary people, the BEM holders, many of whom are thrilled to bits, and they're actually going to be in the Abbey. I think it's going to, something like 450 have been invited. That's fantastic. And a lot of other young people. There is a degree of discrimination, shall we say, Dan, against older people, almost as if the King and the Queen really don't want to acknowledge that they're well into their 70s. As for Michelle O'Neill, I don't know if you noticed that she wants to have a cake and eat it. She was tweeting earlier today about how awful the new budget is for the North, as she calls it, to which I'm afraid I responded on Twitter that if she ever achieved her objective of United Ireland, she wouldn't get any money from Westminster.
Yeah, well, indeed.
So,
and also, she doesn't want to celebrate the coronation. She doesn't want the people of Northern Ireland to celebrate the coronation, Neil. My belief is that she stopped lots of official events.
Absolutely. I mean, she is a Republican first and foremost, and an Irish Republican secondarily. And the idea that she's at the coronation, I think, is an insult to the rest of us in the United Kingdom who do believe that the monarchy is a force for good and do believe in the union of Northern Ireland with Great Britain. Of course, she's entitled to her view. She doesn't want to be British. She wants to be Irish. But that's not the point. You know, this is the coronation of the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
And Nina, isn't
the
there
idea
a problem?
that she should be favoured over Lady Pamela Hicks is, to me, I think, a grotesque insult. And I don't think it's up for us to decide whether Lady Pamela would, if she were invited, want to be in Westminster Abbey. That's
and she would have attended. She would have attended.
One is a political invitation, obviously, and the other is a personal invitation. And I find it very odd that Charles has not invited her, because Lord Mountbatten was so close to, he was Charles's mentor, and so that I can only imagine there must be something personal that has made him not invite her, and a family thing. We don't know that. We have no idea, but it seems very, very odd to me.
Well, it seems like a cruel decision. Edwina Curry, what about the fact that actually, though, there's quite a lot of folk at this coronation who we would prefer not to have there. I mean, China is sending the awful bloke who has cracked down on democracy and freedoms in Hong Kong, for example. Apparently there's going to be this awful guy called Prince Harry there too, that treacherous son of the King. So it's not a brilliant guest list at the moment, Edwina.
It's like any wedding, it's like any big celebration, it's who you have include. I mean, this is the Aldi coronation, whereas the Queen's, in 1953, which some of us were old enough to witness, that was the Waitrose one. This one is a much smaller one. The shelves are much more bare, and when it's gone, it's gone. You know, the choices are much more narrow. I think the king has decided, oh, sod them, basically. We'll have a few of my friends who are the royals, who aren't normally invited to coronations. We'll put out the heads of state invitations and see who comes. So Mrs. Biden is coming, not the Vice President.
Goody. OK, great stuff. Former Tory Minister Edwina Currie, journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, leader of UKIP Neil Hamilton. Really interested to know who you agree with on this one. Should Sinn Féin's Northern Ireland leader Michelle O'Neill get a prize seat for the coronation over the Queen's bridesmaid whose father was murdered by the IRA from Sean? No, she shouldn't. O'Neill represents a party from Northern Ireland that supports republicanism, supports a paramilitary group that killed innocent bystanders in Britain and Northern Ireland over the years, including Earl Mountbatten. She would be a hypocrite if she turns up. From Ali on Twitter, I think the Queen's bridesmaid should have been invited out of respect for his mother. As for Michelle, maybe it's time to put the past behind us and offer the olive branch of peace. Forgiveness allows us to move forward. And John on Twitter says, I detest the thought that a woman with her views is going to the coronation, but whether I like it or not, she is the elected First Minister of a constituent part of our United Kingdom. I'm going to be honest with you too. There's a couple of other people I'm desperate to know whether they're invited. Are we going to see Lady Susan Hussey at the coronation? Because wouldn't it be ironic if she's not invited but Ngozi Fulani is? Your verdict now in. Just 16% of you believe that Michelle O'Neill should get the invite over Lady Pamela Hicks. 84% of you with Neil Hamilton on this. Coming up, Thomas Markle has refound his voice as Meghan's estranged family prepares to speak out against the Sussexes in a bombshell documentary. Our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, are on deck with their forensic royal analysis imminently. But first, as Irish Eurovision comes under fire from J.K. Rowling for cancelling its act's choreographer because he objected to a jailed trans rapist being described as a woman, why are the woke left so happy to put warped gender ideology ahead of women's rights? Man of the People and ex-Corrie star Charlie Lawson joins me straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lady Colin Campbell on the way, but first our man of the people, Coronation Street legend Charlie Lawson. Now the UK will become proud hosts of this year's Eurovision Song Contest when it kicks off in Liverpool next month, but a gender row has erupted between the Irish entry and J.K. Rowling. So this is the four-piece indie rock band, that's how they describe themselves, Wild Youth. Well, I think there's a good reason those blokes are covering their faces, because this woke band have now very publicly cut ties with their creative director, Ian Bannum, after they took offence to one of his recent tweets railing against extremist gender ideology. The celebrated director had commented on the case of Zara Jade, the convicted rapist who is currently serving a 9-year sentence for a vicious assault on his partner. Now, Jade, in my opinion, is rightly in a men's prison, despite his solicitor's efforts to get him sent to a female jail because he was in the process of transitioning. Bannum sparked woke uproar when he responded to a BBC article that had labelled the biologically mailed sex beast as a woman, declaring it's a man. So I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions. But the author and women's rights defender J.K. Rowling, she was quick to slam the Irish band's virtue-signalling decision to dump their director, tweeting, "The re-traumatisation of female rape survivors, including this man's victims, on seeing him called a woman by the press counts for naturally nothing. The so-called kindness and inclusivity of band Wild Youth is preening, self-satisfied misogyny." For those confused as to why Ian Bannum was fired and publicly lambasted by Wild Youth, here's one of his horrifying tweets. His crime is standing against the insanity of pretending knife-wielding rapists are women if they say they are. So, Charlie, you're obviously no stranger to the world of showbiz, but why do you think these young artists, these young bands, these young celebrities, are so intolerant of different opinions, given they always preach about inclusivity?
Well, it's not a surprise, Daniel, my friend, is it? I mean, they were always going to toe that particular party line, if you like, rather like their friends from that neck of the woods, Jedward. But these lot have got, instead of having funny haircuts, these lot have got bags over their heads. So anyway, fair, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. Look, this is just typical. They're following the trend that we have at the moment, that everybody would stand up and say something against JK because they can. It's a free country. And now it's like water off a duck's back to her now. And of course, if she was ever to have a debate with those four buck idiots, then she'd win hands down. It's as simple as that. And she sticks to her guns. And she has my full support. And you've only got to look at the people on social media now. There was an American guy on the other day saying, if anybody tries to stop me going into a lady's bathroom, it'll be the last thing you ever do. Now, interestingly enough, we all know Eurovision has a huge gay following, and that's absolutely fine. It's not my cup of tea, but, so I'll not be watching. But, I was speaking to a lesbian friend of mine this morning and about this whole subject, and she was finding it increasingly unpleasant with her sexuality, with the transgender movement, not only having a go at Sharon Davis, God bless her, and Riley Gaines in America, but now they seem to be having a go at everybody. And so it's just trendy for these four idiots just to climb on the bandwagon. Imagine if they said something in support of their manager or whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Couldn't possibly do that.
No, and they're on the wrong side of this one because they're backing a rapist over a brilliant director. I think it's so wrong. Oh, look, Charlie, elsewhere...
They're obviously not that bright, are they, big man?
No, doesn't seem like it, but unfortunately we have to hold these people to account, Charlie, because they're the one who's cancelling this poor guy who will now be terrified to ever express his opinion. And that's the fear that I have. People in the showbiz industry now often agree with what you say, Charlie, but they don't have the same balls as you to actually come out and say it publicly. But look, Charlie, elsewhere, the vicious march to veganism continues, with animal rights charity PETA causing a stir after unveiling a very controversial new ad campaign. I couldn't believe this. This is in Lincolnshire, which outrageously claims that eating fish is the same as chowing down on cat. So, Charlie, why are these new age vegan extremists so determined to ruin our diets with their idiot claptrap?
Well, they're actually just getting about parallel with the numpties who are just stop oil. I mean, they're just idiots, for Christ's sake. This woman comes across rather well, the young lady, so she does. She's very nice, and she comes across, and she believes in what she believes in. Well, it's complete and utter shite, excuse me, but that's all it is. I mean, you know, I've never eaten a cat, and I would no intention of eating a cat. I mean, it's just a ridiculous comparison. I understand she doesn't want us to eat cat, but she's trying to say that, you know, having a nice rainbow trout or catching a salmon and eating it, you know, it's parallel to eating your domestic pet. Well, please, darling, just go away and get a life and let us all normal people get on with life. You know what I mean? But these people, they're actually batting on a good wicket at the moment, because we all know what happened at Liverpool, and they've which in my opinion actually was largely down to the speed to the first fence, which is largely down to the jockeys, and they're all warned before the race. But anyway, that's another debate. But she's on a winning wicket because she's jumped on the bandwagon. But quite frankly, most normal people in this great kingdom of ours just really yawn and wish she would just go and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, and let us eat what we choose to eat. I had beautiful salmon fillets for lunch today, but I have to say, I will not be eating my lovely cat Dirk anytime soon. Charlie Lawson, our man of the people, thank you so much. But coming up, as Sly News chief propagandist Kay Burley exposes her true colours in a cringeworthy double confrontation with James Cleverly and Suella Braverman, is the Home Secretary right that channel migrants are fueling crime and disorder in the UK? That's the big debate with my superstar panel soon. But next, Meghan Markle's estranged family prepare to speak out in one of the most hotly anticipated documentaries of the year, including heartbroken Thomas Markle, who has re-found his voice after that horror stroke. Well, one of his close friends and one of our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell, gives her reaction alongside Phil Dampier on this. And I'm going to show you what Thomas has to say. That is immediately after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Calvin McKenzie and Robert Lacey on the way, but time now for our Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And in a world exclusive, Australia's Channel 7 will air a never-before-seen look at Meghan Markle this Sunday, featuring an extraordinary message from her family, including Thomas Markle, her dad, who I'm glad to report is re-finding his voice. So have a look at the bombshell trailer, which has just been released.
The world has never seen Meghan like this. The homecoming queen. The Markle family reunite.
This would be your last interview ever.
Treasured memories, home truths, and secret tapes are all coming out.
She would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
We're not going to go away. This is going to change everything.
They're really unhealthy for each other. It's a toxic relationship.
Dad's deathbed plea to the daughter he lost.
How can I fix this?
On the eve of the coronation, the inside story.
Harry already had a lot of these thoughts and feelings, and Meghan just kind of emboldened him.
And is this the biggest Prince Andrew bombshell yet?
What was your relationship with Prince Andrew?
So, a lot to unpick there, Lady C, but I think the thing for me that is actually most upsetting, and I know that you are very fond and close with the Markle family as well, is that Thomas Markle is a decent human being. He is a good guy. You can see how difficult it is for him to speak because he's still recovering from the stroke that nearly took his life a year ago. And all he's asking of Meghan, Lady C, is how can I fix this? But she continues to ignore him.
Well, the reality is he can't fix it. There's nothing for him to do. And incidentally, did you notice that his mouth is distorted, which is obviously a sign, a residual effect of the stroke? So, you know, there's no doubt he had a very serious stroke. But he can't fix it. He didn't break it. It's up to her to fix it. You know, he really has done very little compared. When you stop to think what she and Harry have done, the way they have violated everybody's privacy, the lies they have told, the intrusive interviews they've given. I mean, what Thomas Markle did, which was simply trying to restore his dignity was really a bagatelle compared to what they've done. And how dare she think that her father should be put in this invidious position? I don't think he has anything to do. I think it's up to her, and I think she ought to hurry up and do it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, if she doesn't, I judge her, because this is her father saying, I'm probably close to death. Now, I hope that's not true. You know, I hope Tom has the vigour to fight on. And I know that Samantha, his daughter, and his other son, Tom Markle Jr., are going to support him. But the reality is, he is pleading with her just to get in touch.
Yes, well, you know...
Oh, sorry, you come in, Phil.
Go on, Phil, go on. Go on, Phil, go.
We'll give you your voice back too, Phil.
I thought that was directed at me. No, I mean, it's one of the things. I've always felt incredibly sorry for Thomas Markle. I mean, the fact that they're now living in America and they can't be bothered to go down the road and see him in Mexico, I think it's absolutely cruel. It's absolutely unbelievable. And you remember that interview that Harry gave when he was promoting Spare, saying that she'd lost her father. Well, she hasn't lost him. It's up to them to make it up to him. But it looks like the Aussies have got hold of a bombshell there, doesn't it? Some old footage and some sensational interviews. So let's hope we can see some more of that programme over here. It looks incredible.
Of course. Now, back here, a High Court judge has pointed out glaring inconsistencies in Prince Harry's phone hacking claim against the publisher of The Sun, NGN. This is Mr. Justice Fancourt, who said that Harry claimed to know about a secret agreement between News Group newspapers and Buckingham Palace that prevented him launching litigation in 2012, while also claiming he only fully appreciated the scale of the hacking in 2019. But the judge questioned why the Duke had failed to make reference to the alleged deal between the newspaper group and William in his original claim. Now, royal sources say that Harry could have received a payout, just like his brother Prince William, who quietly settled with the company in 2020, but, quote, he went rogue. So, Lady C, the issue here for Harry is that the judge doesn't care that he's a prince. The judge isn't just going to accept his narrative. And actually, on the show last night, I went through his witness statement and picked holes in it. It's simply not truthful, Lady C.
Well, the judge has made it absolutely clear that he has problems with the facts as Harry has presented them, and that they are the present witness statement is completely at variance with his particulars of claim. And basically, you know, that means that Harry is an unreliable witness, that you can't rely on anything he says. A rather more perfunctory would say, you know, the judge is saying very elegantly, he thinks Harry is lying, that he has come up with a new version of the facts to really gouge out the eyes of News Group newspapers, because his old version of the facts is not going to wash. And I mean, it's as big a condemnation from a judge as I've ever heard about a potential claimant's evidence.
Yeah, and Phil, the extraordinary thing about this witness statement is he's not just going for the newspapers, he's going for his own family. Yet again, he's going for Charles, he's going for Camilla, he's going for William just 9 days before the coronation.
I know it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, we all know he likes rewriting history, but I mean, when you think about it, before Meghan came along, he and William were so close. I just don't believe that William wouldn't have discussed phone hacking with him. He wouldn't have discussed with him the tactics to deal with it, and indeed Charles and the Queen. So I think he's just making it up as he goes along, really. And what fascinates me is he's got these 3 cases now, hasn't he, against the Sun, the Mail and the Mirror. What happens if he loses them? Is he going to give up with all this legal nonsense and carry on with it and just keep mounting up the costs? Or is he going to finally sort of take one step back and say, look, you know, there's really nothing to be gained by this? It's quite sad to watch, It's almost self-destructive.
It's a deranged mission now. It's a deranged mission. But look, can we cross to LA? Because Harry and Meghan were spotted on a romantic date at a Lakers basketball game this week. I'm going to say romantic like that, because, of course, they were caught on kiss cam, Lady C, where it appears that Meghan pulled away from Harry. But instead of this actually being an intimate night together, Lady C, apparently this was actually a group of lackeys and employees surrounding them, including their lawyer, PR executive, and a load of Archewell staff. So, Lady C, this whole thing looks staged to me. Am I being unfair?
Oh, of course you're not being unfair, Dan. It's obviously been staged. It was staged to knock out Louis' birthday and to muscle in on the coronation. It's also giving the message that the separation rumours are not true, but they might be true because she can't even allow him to kiss her. You know, the problem with Meghan and Harry is there's so many subtexts with their narratives. They just throw things out the way people throw sand in everybody's face. And I actually think that if you examine what they've done, it cost about $20,000 to have their employees, who are employees supposedly of a charity. She also has her lawyer and her business manager, who, contrary to reports in the papers, are very second-rate. They are not first-rate. They're not of the first rank in Hollywood. They have always been second-rate. And they've boosted her financially, and she's boosting their reputations, they hope, with her celebrity. Except, of course, her celebrity has become pretty much infamy, hasn't it?
Phil, do you think they're okay? You know, are you getting any sense that Harry and Meghan are leading separate lives?
I don't think they're leading separate lives, but it was a bit more like the office party, wasn't it, than a romantic night out. I mean, turned around and everyone else was there. But I think it's all part of her relaunch. She looked quite different, didn't she? She's got the new hairstyle. I don't know whether she's had anything else done, but I think it's all part of it.
And of course, Phil, this relaunch just happened to come. Oh, I see you, Lady C. I see what you're hinting there. This relaunch happened to come just before the coronation, so she can steal all of the headlines. Hey, but very excited to say, Lady C and Phil Dampier will be live with me for a special edition of the show next Thursday night, previewing the coronation. So I will see you both in person at BP on Thursday. But coming up, as Harry launches his fresh round of Montecito missiles, Robert Lacey is going to join me live in the studio. He's, of course, the brains behind The Crown. But next, Suella Braverman locks horns with Sky News party girl Kay Burley. But why are the Rabid frothing at the mouth at her admission, given that there are multiple cases easily proving the Home Secretary's point about these migrants? The Superstar panel are riled and ready to go on this straight after the break.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, with the SNP engulfed in accusations of corruption, the Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross was today reminded of a certain TV crime drama.
This is all starting to look like an episode of Line of Duty.
And after Lord Frost appeared on this show to call for failing devolution to be reversed, the First Minister, Humza Useless, has hit out in a lame riposte.
Only last week, a senior Tory said the quiet bit out loud. They admitted they want to put devolution in reverse.
Well, let's discuss it out loud then, shall we, Useless? Should the SNP have less power and not more? Calvin Mackenzie is going to give his searing take on the collapse of Scottish separatism in Uncancelled. After Superwoman Suella had to spell out British law to Sly News party gal Kay Burley.
Not illegal, is it, to come here on a boat? It is illegal to get on a boat, to come here illegally. You don't have a legal permission to be in the United Kingdom. Get on one of the boats.
So is she right that illegal migrants are criminals who are at odds with British values? That's a big debate with my superstar panel next. And tonight, I'm joined by Carol McGiffin, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. It's just 9 days until King Charles is awkwardly reunited with his son at the coronation, but another father has his own axe to grind.
Dad's deathbed plea to the daughter he lost.
How can I fix this?
So sad. So as the lovely Thomas Markle, a really good man, gets his voice back almost a year on from that devastating stroke, are the Sussexes suddenly on the back foot? Robert Lacey, author of Battle of Brothers and advisor on the hit Netflix series The Crown, speaks out live on that bombshell TV appearance, Harry's victimhood narrative being blown up by a High Court judge, and much more as the coronation countdown continues. Plus, as a massive new global study shows the UK is one of the least racist countries in the world, one of our superstar panellists, Sean Bailey, says the left are trying to create a race war. So our top Tory will explain why in just a few minutes. And finally, the king of the chat show, TV legend Jerry Springer, has died at the age of 79. And unlike the snaring presenters we see on String today, he knew that entertaining telly should be for the people, by the people.
Harry has more ass than you do.
What a guy. And, you know, he was born in Britain, Jerry Springer. He was born in a tube station in 1944 during World War II. Of course, his parents there hiding from the bomb. So perhaps he could be a contender for tonight's Greatest Britain as well. We're also going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, in just a moment. Before all of that, though, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story tonight from the GB newsroom. In Sudan, the army and paramilitary RSF group have both agreed now to extend the ceasefire for a further 72 hours. British forces have evacuated almost 900 people out of Sudan so far, and those rescue efforts are continuing. The Foreign Secretary said today it would be potentially impossible to continue with that operation if the truce had ended. The deadline was going to be at 11 o'clock tonight. The government's now urging those with British passports and visas to make their way to the airfield as soon as possible. Here, the Royal College of Nursing has been forced to cut short strike action planned for this weekend after the government won a legal challenge in court. The High Court ruled part of their 48-hour walkout on Tuesday would be unlawful, as the RCN's 6-month mandate for strike action would have run out the day before. The RCN's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, says the government has lost the trust of nurses and the public. But the Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Health, Maria Caulfield, said she's hopeful negotiations will now be able to continue.
We recognise that every day of strike has an impact on patients. It's outpatients appointments cancelled, tests cancelled, operations cancelled, and absolutely, we don't want to stop the right to strike, but it has to be done in a legal way, and that's why the Secretary of State took the action he did. Hopefully, we can then get people back around the table, particularly the RCN, to try and come to a resolution overall.
More strike news now. This time, the RMT union, which has announced workers across 14 train operators are due to walk out on the 13th of May after rejecting the latest pay offer. General Secretary Mick Lynch claims the rail delivery group has now reneged on their original proposal. Earlier, the ASLEF union said train drivers are planning 3 new strikes across May and June after turning down a 4% pay rise. The action by both unions will impact both the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool and the FA Cup final. Now, detectives searching for the partner of a pregnant teacher who was killed in Glasgow have found a body. Police launched a murder investigation after Morel Sturrock was found dead on Tuesday morning. She was 29 weeks pregnant and her baby did not survive. Police Scotland say the body is yet to be formally identified, but it is believed to be that of her fiancé David Yates, who was wanted in connection with her murder. The DUP's leader says the government's latest budget for Northern Ireland is playing politics and punishing people. The funding allocation is likely to result in significant real-term cuts to public services. Devolution is currently suspended because the DUP is boycotting power sharing over post-Brexit trade. But the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris says he'll continue to hold talks with leaders in Stormont.
The purpose was not to punish anybody with this budget. The purpose of this budget is to make sure public services can continue in the absence of an executive. Now, I do want to see an executive up and running, and that's why I continue to have talks with the DUP representatives, and let's see where they lead to.
You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. First front pages are in. The Metro reports on the cruel rail strikes by the union ASLEF as they plan to walk out on the day of the first ever FA Cup final between Manchester rivals City and United. The RMT union also announced today that they will stage their own strike to clash with Eurovision, which is being held in Liverpool next month. Honestly, scumbags. The Guardian leads with the warning that the Metropolitan Police could be failing to spot serial killers and identify murderers because they are not properly investigating unexpected deaths. That's according to the Inspector of Constabulary. And those woke journalists couldn't help themselves. They've also gone with the, in quotation marks, revelation that the royal family are linked to slavery, with the paper reporting that King Charles's direct ancestors bought and exploited enslaved people. My superstar panel back with me now. You weren't impressed with that one, were you, McGiff?
Oh, my God. I don't know how much more I can take.
Just yawning at the Guardian's wokery in action.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
It is.
It's like...
Give it a rest.
Give it a rest, exactly. Put a sock in it and stop it.
Top Tory, Sean Bailey alongside her, and the author and broadcaster, Amy Nicole. Now, Sly News party gal Kay Burley let her lefty agenda slip once again in a brace of confrontations with Suella Braverman and James Cleverly on the migrant crisis today. This is the moment the Foreign Secretary said small boat arrivals were, quote, abusing our hospitality when asked if he agreed with Robert Jenrick's comments about migrants having different values to Brits.
Thousands, tens of thousands
But it's not
of people.
illegal to come over on a boat. Is it illegal to come on a boat?
But where people
Isn't it illegal, though, Foreign Secretary? Why are you saying it's illegal? It's not illegal.
Because
to
we
come
have
on a
legal.
boat.
We can also see that there are people who are proactively abusing our hospitality. If we see people abusing that generosity, it erodes trust. It erodes trust in the immigration system.
Kay was on one today. She asked the same question to Suella Braverman as the Home Secretary ruled out opening routes to non-British Sudanese people fleeing violence.
Secretary, if you can answer my question, what did he mean by not adopting our values?
Yeah, people who are coming here illegally are breaking our laws. They are criminals and they don't have a right to be here. That is at odds with our values of upholding the rule of law, generosity,
But as we
and
know,
helping
people who
those
come here, it's
people.
not illegal, is it, to come here on a boat?
We've had this discussion before,
Yes,
Kay,
we have.
and we disagree. It is illegal to get on a boat to come here illegally. You don't have a legal permission to be in the United Kingdom.
Get on one of the boats.
Now, I'm sure 90% of the country actually agree with Superwoman Suella there, but of course her remarks have sparked outrage from the frothing at the mouth left. It was only in November that the National Crime Agency said Albanian gangs were now running the majority of cannabis production in the UK, with thugs smuggling hundreds of millions of pounds out of Britain each year and, quote, blatantly abusing modern slavery laws. Then we had the stark warning from Stephen Watson, Greater Manchester Police, who said channel migrants were fuelling a whopping £8.6 billion in organised crime trade after recruiting millions from asylum hotels and children's homes. We also had the savage murder of Thomas Roberts in Bournemouth by the monster Afghani Abdul Rahimzai, who snuck into the UK claiming he was a child and hiding the fact he'd already shot dead 2 people in Serbia years before. So I'm sorry, Carol McGiffin, Suella is speaking the truth on this, no matter how much the hard left media might not want to accept the facts.
Well, yeah, everything she says is absolutely true and spot on. And this new law that they've passed through the Commons, got to go to the laws, obviously, for the small boats, it sounds good and it sounds encouraging. But I'm sorry, Dan, but I just think they can pass as many laws as they want, they can change as many rules as they want, they can say what they like, because that's all they ever do. Nothing will ever happen. And
so the rhetoric is good, but we're not seeing action.
We're not seeing anything being actually done. And she's right, or James Cleverly's right, when he says that they actually are abusing our hospitality, because they know full well. Why do you think that most of them who come in the boats skip about 4 or 5 countries before they get here? They don't claim asylum there. They want to claim it here. And the reason they do that is because they know, A, they will never have to leave, and B, they'll get everything given to them on a plate, and they do.
Or could it
be they can disappear and get into the crime world, which is exactly
I mean, Amy, what do you disagree with? What do you disagree with?
I would say that the reason that they would probably want to come here is because English. They speak English. Most of the world speaks English.
Who cares?
Now, the reason that Suella is factually incorrect is because there is no evidence of causal impact on immigration on crime. It's factually
Well, I just gave you 3 examples.
No, that is anecdotes. That does not make a crime rate. So 12% of the criminal population are UK foreign nationals. 13% of the population are foreign nationals. That's actually lower. So they're underrepresented in the crime rates. Now, research does suggest, however, that people overestimate the link between immigrants and crime.
Amy, the slight difference is, Amy...
Can I finish this point? Let me finish this point. That creates fear, and that is why policies around clamping down on immigration are so popular, because they prey upon the fear that immigration spikes crime.
It's a very real fear, Amy.
No, it's not.
Because how would you feel if Thomas Roberts was your relative, your boyfriend, your brother, murdered by this absolute scumbag who was not meant to be in the country? How would you feel about that? Would you still feel that he should be allowed here as a murderer?
I would feel like that murderer could have been born and bred here or come as a...
No, but he was a murderer before we allowed him into the country.
Are equal. They are not at a
because of
higher
our soft-touch
chance of murdering
policies.
because of where they
Sean
come
Bailey,
from.
do you want to come in here?
I think the thing to look at here, if you bring in large numbers of people and they are then exposed to being exploited, because Amy's facts may be technically correct, but you then have to look at what crimes are they involved in, how are they being... Hold on.
Sean, listen to you, Amy, so let Sean make
what crimes they're involved in, and are these people being exploited? There's been talk about prostitution, etc. I don't think people travel here with the desire to be a prostitute. I think they get here and they get exploited by these gangs. And look, when the police say things, they have to be very certain about what they're saying. So when the police are saying it's a worry, we need to look at it, we do need to look at it. I don't think you can blanket say people are criminals. I don't believe people are... I don't even think 5% of them are criminals, but 1% is enough to cause enough trouble if they're doing a particular type of crime. What British people have shown over time, we're particularly terrified by burglary, drugs and street crime. And if that's the impact, then of course try to push back.
But by the way, the fact that crime is out of control, Amy, in our own country doesn't mean that we should fling the doors open to terrorists, murderers and rapists from overseas.
Well, you know what? If you look at crime rates related to migration, that the sex crimes to terrorism was completely the lowest down of the crimes that these people are committing, which is actually just as likely as them being...
But it's about,
do you know the number one crime?
It
It was fare dodging and fraud trying to
trying to misrepresent their papers, which is obviously going to be the way. The economics of it is what causes crime, not who you are.
You're speaking absolute rubbish, but look, I'm going to move on because the TV world was shaken today by the shocking news that legendary British-born US talk show legend Jerry Springer has died from cancer, aged 79. Trailblazing TV presenter born in the London Underground station of Highgate during World War II fronted the Jerry Springer Show. I loved it for almost 3 decades, recording almost 5,000 episodes of on-air drama, infidelity revelations and outrageous disputes.
Next on Springer. What you're going to hear today is absolutely astonishing. Meet Earl, a man who cut off his own male organ.
He did it with a pair of garden shears identical to these.
Oh, boy. Okay.
All right. From now on, who doesn't think I'm funny?
Jerry has more ass than you do.
Know this. There's never been a moment in the 25 years of doing this show that I ever thought I was better than the people who appear on our stage. I'm not better, only lucky. So thanks for the 25 years. We've signed on to do a whole bunch more. And as long as I stay healthy, we will. And on that note, take care of yourself.
Just beautiful. The usual critics are snaring today, but I actually think that Jerry Springer democratised TV. He allowed ordinary folk, not preening multimillionaires, to become stars. And why the hell not? He's a huge loss to the entertainment world. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Carol McGiffin, do stand by, because coming up, is Sean right to accuse the left of creating a race war after it's revealed that Britain is one of the least racist countries in the world? So Sean and the Superstar panel will clash and make their case after this. But next, as Thomas Markle gets set to make a deathbed plea to his daughter Meghan on the eve of the coronation, is there any hope that either of the estranged Sussexes will reconcile with their families? Esteemed royal historian, he's an advisor to the Crown, Robert Lacey, speaks out as the countdown to the coronation is on. We're back soon.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's news.
It's just 9 days until the coronation, and despite the Duke of Sussex confirming he will attend his dad's big day, relations remain strained with his brother, the Prince of Wales. In a distracting subplot to the crowning of King Charles III, this week, Harry sensationally named William in High Court papers, claiming that his brother received a huge secret sum from Rupert Murdoch's newspaper group over phone hacking. The extraordinary witness statement comes just months after Harry made a string of personal attacks against William in his memoir Spare. And while royal insiders say the king retains hope of a family reconciliation, I'd say he's a little bit deluded on that one. Tensions between the two rival brothers are at fever pitch. My next guest is the esteemed royal historian Robert Lacey, who knows the siblings better than most as the author of Battle of Brothers. He's also, of course, the top historical advisor on the hit Netflix series The Crown. And I'm delighted that Robert Lacey joins me live in the studio. So, Robert, I mean, it's very difficult to see how there can be any reconciliation between the two brothers, given that this week, just days before he knew he was going to come face-to-face with William, he's throwing this grenade out in the High Court.
Yes, I think Prince Charles's wish to reconcile with his younger son makes a lot of sense. But you can't blame William for being absolutely furious. This is just the latest in what, in his view, are a series of betrayals of personal family confidences. Whatever you say about Prince Andrew has stayed loyal to the family. And the fact that Harry has basically exploited family disputes, which happen in any family, for money, is something that I think William understandably finds hard to forgive. And I think the worrying thing from the point of view of the monarchy is you can't see it ending. Because obviously Harry and Meghan have worked out, although they say they want nothing to do with the royal family, that's how they're identified. That's how they make money. And I think it's extraordinary that at the very moment when they're rejecting everything royal, they insist that their children should be known as prince and princess. So you have this strange phenomenon of Meghan out there in California saying she dislikes the royal family, but she's actually the one who's, by insisting on royal status, the one who's producing the most current princes and princesses.
Absolute bizarre hypocrisy. I couldn't agree more. And it wasn't just William who got it in these High Court papers this week. It was the late Queen Elizabeth II, who is painted as some sort of doddery fool by Harry, who is constantly overruled by her own courtiers and her own son. And then you also have Charles and Camilla, yet again, being dragged through the mud by Harry. He went right back. He raised the accusations from the late 80s and the early 90s when an affair was going on and there was the leak of the Squidgygate tapes and all of that. And also made out as if Charles and Camilla have somehow been colluding with the media for decades to prepare for this moment. Is any of that true, or is Prince Harry now living in a fantasy world?
I think he's correct that in the years after Diana's death, Prince Charles's emphasis was on getting Camilla accepted. And there was one episode when Harry had been involved in drugs, and when people around Charles used that episode to present Charles as a father that perhaps he hadn't been, because certainly in those years, actually, the best stepmother that the two boys had was not Camilla, it was the Queen. But now we've moved on. It's 20 years, quarter of a century later. And at the moment of his father's, well, let's hope it's not crowning glory, because let's hope the glory goes on. But at this moment of such importance in his father's life, to resurrect all these matters for essentially his own profit. Well, what's interesting, of course, is that even in America, the once popular Sussexes are now figures of fun.
But it feels like a vendetta, doesn't it, now?
Well, it's...
certainly a vendetta against the media, but it also feels like a vendetta against his own family.
Yes, and he views the royal family as colluding with the media. Well, obviously, the royal family have to live with the media. The media is the vehicle by which the royal family are projected. But he is not above using the media himself, is he, as we saw?
No, indeed, which is why I think he cannot call this out constantly. Meghan tried to say that it's been a circus created by people like you and me. Actually, they have created the circus with the autobiography and with the Netflix series and the Oprah interview and all of that. But there's going to be a bombshell for the Markles over the weekend. Thomas Markle, Meghan's dad, he is a very good man, in my opinion. I've had a lot to do with him. I think he's been treated appallingly by his daughter, had a terrible stroke about a year ago. The family blame Meghan, the pressure that she put her father under for this stroke. He lost his ability to speak. He's been working hard to get it back, and he's going to actually speak to Australian TV over the weekend. We've got a short clip of what he has to say, but it's a direct call to Meghan.
The world has never seen Meghan like this. The homecoming queen. The Markle family reunite.
This would be your last interview ever.
Treasured memories, home truths, and secret tapes are all coming out. Dad's deathbed plea to the daughter he lost.
How can I fix this?
And I would question, Robert, how can she continue to ignore her father?
There's a poignancy about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
There? And when you think this is the man who supported her through her education, this is the man who made her what she was. This is the man who introduced her to show business. So when we see this figure, Meghan, at odds with both her own family and so many members in her family, it does give you a perspective on why she might have fallen out with the new family that she was invited to join and into which she was welcomed so warmly.
The problem is, for Charles, they're stealing all of the attention, and it feels purposeful. This doesn't feel coincidental, because they made their first joint public appearance, this is the Sussexes, at the LA Lakers game, where they put on a public display of affection to the world, even though Meghan did turn away. She didn't want Harry to kiss her. She's also unveiled this new look. She's had a makeover. I mean, she could have done this a couple of months ago. Why on earth are they doing this 9 days before the coronation, Robert, if they're not trying to hijack it?
Well, there's another question. Why, when they were invited a month ago, could they not then have said, Meghan staying at home with the children, and Harry's going to come. Again, it was something they played out. I mean, I suspect, we haven't got the solid evidence for this, he was negotiating over where he's going to sit in the Abbey. You saw a look on his face when they appeared at the Queen's Jubilee, and he suddenly realised he wasn't going to be sat with the family, but he was going to be sat in the equivalent of Siberia. That's presumably what's being argued about now, but you're quite right. The coronation is intended to celebrate our new head of state and what he stands for. Our head of state stands for all the values we agree about, trying to live a good family life, not being perfect, but trying to do so. And Harry has yet again proved a distraction.
As a royal historian, is there any precedent for this sort of situation? For example, with the Duke of Windsor and Wallis Simpson. I mean, does Harry deserve a good seating position in the Abbey, given he is no longer a working royal, or can he be sat 10 rows back?
Well, the difference between Harry and the Duke of Windsor is that both split with their families. The Duke of Windsor had his say, and that was it. He said he wanted no more to do with the royal family, and he published his memoirs, and then he went off and lived his life with the woman that he loved. It looks to me as if Harry is destined to spend the rest of his life, or much of his life, fighting against this institution that he says he has no respect for, and bringing a great deal of grief to his father at a very important moment in his life.
Yeah. He's living in the past, isn't he? It's very sad. Very sad. Robert Lacey, royal historian, who's, of course, chief historical advisor to The Crown, the Netflix series. Thank you so much for being here. But coming up in Uncancelled, as Whom's Useless was made to defend his scandal-ridden party again today in Holyrood. Does Scotland need to be saved from this SNP nightmare? Calvin Mackenzie gives his unwavering take soon. But next in the media buzz, as a massive new global study shows the UK is one of the least racist countries in the world, Sean Bailey says the left are deliberately creating a race war. Does the rest of my superstar panel agree? I think not, so it might get heated. We're back with that in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends were like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's News Tonight in our Media Buzz. We've got more front pages. Justin. The Daily Mail. They read my mind, leading on the so-called vindictive... Well, I don't say so-called, actually. I think they are. I called them scumbags earlier, didn't I? The rail unions, who have sparked fury today after announcing their plans to target the FA Cup final, the Epsom Derby, which I'm meant to be going to and probably won't be able to now, and Eurovision for strike action, which hospitality chiefs warn would be a hammer blow to the industry. And it's not only fans who will be affected, with the paper reporting that pupils sitting their GCSEs could also face disruption with the strikes coinciding with exam season. So I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier: scumbags. The Eye reports that NHS doctors without UK citizenship are set to be left behind in the Sudan evacuation. And The Times reports on these tougher new gambling laws being introduced by the government in the hopes of saving young people from addicts. Now, part of the new curbs will see under 25s limited to a maximum of between £2 and £4 for online slot machines, with enhanced checks on their finances. But this is a very weird one for me, because this is a Conservative government, and it feels like another example of the nanny state in action. My superstar panel, back with me now, though, the columnist and media personality Carol McGiffin, top Tory Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, in a massive new global study, the UK has been confirmed, and let's celebrate this, folks, one of the least racist countries in the world. The analysis from the Policy Institute at King's College London uses a traditional and actually very clever way of measuring racism by asking a simple question: would you be happy to live next door to someone of a different race? Just 2% of Brits said they'd feel uncomfortable, meaning we ranked as the third most accepting country globally, ranking ahead of Germany, the US and France. European nations, Italy and Spain, meanwhile, scored a noticeably higher 12 and 13%. But despite that hard evidence, the BLM movement 3 years ago gave the false impression of a bigoted Britain, with the country's woke politicians like Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner taking the knee in a virtue signalling display. But in case you thought the country had moved on from divisive race baiting, just yesterday, Labour MP Bella Ribeiro Addy called on the Prime Minister to apologise for Britain's role in the slave trade.
I want to ask the Prime Minister today if he will do what Bernie Grant asked all those years ago, what I have asked and what countless others have asked since, and offer a full and meaningful apology for our country's role in slavery and colonialism, and commit to reparatory justice.
Well, no, Mr. Speaker. What I think our focus should now be on doing is, of course, understanding our history in all its parts, not running away from it, but right now making sure that we have a society which is inclusive and tolerant of people from all backgrounds. Trying to unpick our history is not the right way forward, and it's not something that we will focus our energies on.
So, Sean Bailey, we're the third least racist country in the world. That should be celebrated. That should be screamed from the rooftops. But you say, actually, the left don't want to embrace this stat because they're trying to create a race war. What do you mean?
Look, I mean a race war in the intellectual sense, but they've talked about a rainbow coalition, and all it does is focus on our differences. And if you've noticed that over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, our politics has become more and more and more polarised, and we're pulling the country apart rather than focusing on what we have in common, which is much more we have in common than we have in difference, and how we move forward together. And what I worry about is that we do two very important things. One, I was born in this country. I've been here my whole entire life. This feels like one of the most racist moments in the public discourse that we've ever seen. And remember, we've had moments with the NF and all sorts of stuff. I can tell you stories of having to run away from the NF when I was young. But the thing we're having now, it's being used to beat people over the head, and it's actually driving wedges between communities. And that's my second point. Young people in this country now, I believe they had made a lot of progress with racism, but now it's been brought back in a way, almost as a punishment beating, and to make people feel guilty. And we're beginning to lose our allies. And I think a lot of racism is now becoming a hidden piece. It isn't overt like it used to be. We can't do it. It's becoming a hidden piece. And that's because people won't acknowledge the progress that has been made. Of course, there's lots of racist people in the country. We need to deal with that. But we've made significant progress. And I challenge anybody, as your surveys show, to go anywhere else in the world and find less racism.
Well, Amy Nicole, third least racist country in the world. Why do you craven folk on the left not celebrate how brilliant we are as a country, how tolerant we are as a country, how accepting we are as a country, and not understand that actually the reason why people are trying to arrive here illegally is because of our tolerance?
I agree with you. We are a tolerant country, and I think maybe the 2% are the current cabinet, actually. But can I just say that I think it's a bit of a wonky survey.
Do you think people are racist for trying to stop the votes, do you?
We've done that one before. The way they did this survey is they asked people, would you live next door? So I don't think everybody's going to go, like, say their true feelings.
But Amy, they ask it in every country.
I just think the statistics could be a little bit off.
OK, so this is great. This is great. But so you don't pull apart every other survey that throws something bad about the UK, but all of a sudden when there's a survey done internationally, not by me, by the way, but by King's College London,
I just don't...
all of a sudden you don't believe the results. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think this should distract from the ongoing racial disparities that do exist. Like last week we saw a statistic that, you know, you're 4 times more likely to die in childbirth if you're black.
Yeah, we also saw Diane Abbott be incredibly racist last week. Doesn't mean that the whole country is anti-Semitic. I mean, Carol, look, Amy's reaction is a fascinating case study, isn't it? Because it's proof that
do you think everyone answered that question honestly?
No, but you're missing the point.
So
they
it
ask the same
underestimates.
question in every country. So I think the same number of Brits might lie about it as the same number of Italians.
Fine. I think it's great that we are the least racist, and I accept that we are probably the most tolerant. We are the most tolerant. I don't deny that, but I also think it underplays the truth about the racial disparities in this country.
So my point stands, McGiff, when we have great news like this, just like we had the report by the brilliant Tony Stewart, which said we're not an institutionally racist country. The left either ignore it or refuse to accept the results.
Yeah, and I think Sean is right. I think all of this, having things, you know, shoved down your throat all the time and being forced to think this or know that or apologising for slavery.
If you don't read this particular book, it means you're racist.
Yeah, it is. It's
we were literally being told that.
No, you can't say anything without being called either a racist, a homophobe or a transphobe or an Islamophobe or whatever. And it's...
Yeah, but it becomes meaningless too.
It is meaningless and it's totally wrong. But I can understand, actually, right now, as Sean says, it's a dangerous moment in time because you can actually feel people becoming resentful. And if that turns into racism, proper racism, then I blame the people that have caused that. They've actually caused that because Britain is a really tolerant country, sometimes too tolerant.
I mean, but the thing is, the institutions just aren't. I mean, look at the Casey report into the police.
No,
the police were proven to have a real problem with racism.
Okay, so
you're doing it again.
But you're desperate to try and paint Britain as a racist.
Hold on.
Let's take a final word.
Let's take on institutional racism. Sometimes that's a lazy term because what it is, it's individuals. If you look at the people who run the police, if you look at most police officers, they're not racist, but a few have made it.
To have a massive problem with racism. Our armed forces, massive problems with racism.
You need to address
Sean, it's laziness to ignore racial disparities. We have to admit that they exist.
Nobody
and they need to be worked on.
Nobody said we're ignoring them, but when you say entire institutions are racist, what you mean is people who are not racist, they're racist too. How do they react
to that? And of course, no one is denying that racism exists. We just saw it with Diane Abbott being incredibly racist about Jewish folk last week. But the point is, that doesn't mean we're an anti-Semitic country. And what I find hilarious is you're going to see hardly any coverage about this report elsewhere in the media because it doesn't fit the narrative that Britain is a racist hellhole. We're not. We're the third least racist country in the world. We must celebrate that. Now, finally, guests at a White House state dinner got more than they bargained for when the president of South Korea belted out a line of Don McLean hit American Pie. So this is the moment Yoon Suk-yeol took the mic from Joe Biden and let loose.
The music
Don't expect me to sing this.
제가 노래하는 건 기대하지 마십시오.
So what's actually most incredible about that clip actually isn't the South Korean president singing. It's Joe Biden's admission that he's not going to sing because he can barely speak. In case you missed it, look, I'm just going to play this to you again.
Don't expect me to sing this.
제가 노래하는 건 기대하지 마십시오. 노래하는 건
Yep, loving the newfound self-awareness, Mr President. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Carol McGiffin, do stand by because coming up is Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, right to say that illegal channel migrants are threatening community cohesion in the UK. We'll find out as we crown tonight's Greatest Britain. And Union Jackass, but next in Uncancelled after Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross compares the SNP's woes to TV crime series Line of Duty. What's Lord Frost right to say on this show that we should reverse Scottish devolution? Well, Humsey Useless whined about those comments today, but find out what Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie thinks in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has described the police investigation into SNP's finances as her worst nightmare. But this bad dream just keeps getting worse for Queen Nick and Humsey Useless. At another FMQ's humbling for the new First Minister, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Douglas Ross, mocked the mess the SNP is in, comparing it to the hit police drama Line of Duty.
This week, the SNP's ex-treasurer, Colin Beattie, said it wasn't me, Gov, when he was asked about the notorious camper van before abruptly changing his mind. And Humsey Useless has said he isn't sure if Scottish Government ministers are using burner phones. That's what the First Minister said. This is all starting to look like an episode of Line of Duty.
And as the SNP's reckless management of Scotland continues to bear its rotten fruit, Lord Frost explained on my show this week why now is the perfect time to start to reverse devolution.
We have ridden that tiger long enough. It's come close to dismembering the country, and it's time to stop and have a proper debate about, does Scotland need all these powers?
In a failed attempt to signal business as usual, Humza Eustace directly responded to that Frost interview in a promo video urging separatists to take part in a national campaign day. Watch.
Only last week, a senior Tory said the quiet bit out loud. They admitted they want to put devolution in reverse.
In Westminster today, the SNP's Brendan O'Hara tried to take Penny Mordaunt to task over Lord Frost's devolution proposal, but the Leader of the House of Commons slammed his party's record.
How devastating it must be to SNP members and supporters to have placed their hopes and trust at the hands of people who have been so reckless with their dreams and the mandate that they have given them. And now they know how many Scottish taxpayers also feel when they look at the SNP's ruinous sell-off and sell-out of their country.
Calvin Mackenzie, this is all falling apart, isn't it? You've got the Scottish Tory leader now comparing what's going on in the SNP to Line of Duty. So can you understand why Lord Frost says, actually, this might be a moment? Because the Tories never wanted devolution. This was a Labour policy.
Well, it is a good moment to watch the SNP collapsing after 7 years of basically taking our money and then mocking the English and hoping that that turned out to be a policy in itself. And it didn't work in the end. In the end, the chief executive is arrested and the First Minister has to stand down. So the devolution is in reverse. I don't think we should have to hurry it along, because I think it's collapsing anyway as people begin to discover, well, if the SNP can't handle its own finances, what are they doing with ours? After all, they're already being taxed higher, and yet they get a bigger percentage of the money from the Treasury than anybody, including the English. So the Scots are doing just great under the present system. Why they'd want to change it, I have no idea, since it's now clear that the nationalists can't run anything, including their own finances, where actually they can't find auditors in time to get their accounts signed off in this financial year. They are in serious trouble, and they'll get fined for that on top of everything else. And on top of that, I do not believe that, much as we dislike Sturgeon, she turned out to be a leader. Yusuf, or Useless as you like, and others like to refer to him, actually is not a winning hand in my view. And that actually he's going to be like those managers who followed for a while, followed the Manchester United legend, and there is going to be a series of them that's going to be dismissed, and he's one of them. He's going to be rejected. They've got a by-election coming up shortly. They're going to lose that to Labour, and if they lose that to Labour, this is the only thing that worries me, that we're going to end up with a whole load of Labour MPs, a whole load of Gordon Browns coming down here. And actually, I liked it when there weren't a lot of Gordon Browns down here.
No, indeed, that is a good point. And of course, now he's almost pleading with Starmer to get into a coalition of chaos.
Yes, it's absolutely fantastic. By the way, on the Gordon Brown issue, I noticed that he hasn't said anything about bullying. Have you noticed that?
I wonder why, Kelvin. Why do you think that is?
I mean, he was a proper 101% ogre. Right? A Labour cabinet minister told me that. So why is it that he doesn't step forward and say, isn't it disgraceful the way they've treated Dominic Raab? I got away with it scot-free.
Very, very good point, Calvin Mackenzie. You do make me laugh. And Calvin back, of course, Monday night. Have a good weekend, Calvin. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar back with me, McGiff. Who's your nominee for Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain tonight is Navina Bridgen. That's Andrew Bridgen's wife, who is brilliantly stuck up for him. And she's angry because she has been persecuted, and she's really angry at the Tory party for sacking him for doing the actual job that he was voted to do by his constituents, and that's speaking up for them.
Yeah, well, I hope we hear more from Navina, because she says she's got quite a tale to tell.
Yeah.
Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is the RAF for heroically evacuating British citizens from Sudan. People who've said that the evacuation haven't gone well clearly don't understand the level of danger involved. They're quietly getting on their job, as the RAF always do, and let's hope they can get as many people out as quickly as possible. Again, it's a demonstration of we're a well-organised country when we need to be.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee?
I've gone for an honorary nominee this week. Now, I think this person probably wasn't that good for me, but I spent a lot of time with them in my teenage years, so I had to pay tribute to Jerry Springer, because I was so sad to hear that he died today.
Well, look, I don't think we even need to call Jerry Springer an honorary, because, of course, he was born in a tube station in 1944 in Highgate in London, and he is, of course, tonight's greatest Briton. Huge loss to the entertainment industry. Sad to say goodbye to Jerry Springer. Uni and Jackass time now. Carol McGiffin, who's your nominee?
Well, it's Edwina Currie, and not for anything...
Oh, she was on earlier. Goodness me. What an awkward position you're putting me in, McGiff.
Nothing...
I love you, Edwina.
Not for anything she said on the show tonight, but for what she said on Twitter about Andrew Bridgen, that he was a deluded idiot. And when Lawrence Fox was having a go at the Tory party as well, she said he was too. So she's my union jackass.
Sean Bailey, quickly, your nominee.
My union jackass is the Avles Union. Train drivers are going on strike on
The
FA
scumbags. Let's just call them
if you're
scumbags.
A Man U fan,
Scumbags Union.
If you're a Man U fan
or Eurovision,
or a United fan, you're going to be absolutely
or the Epsom
furious.
Derby, which I'm meant to be going to. Union Jackass time, Amy.
I feel sorry for this guy, because I feel like he's just trying to cover up the fact he's done a horrible job, and I feel like he's being prodded by Suella Braverman. But it has
Who are you choosing?
It has to be Robert Jenrick.
OK, well, he's not winning, because he was very honest this week, so he's not winning.
I mean, he wasn't, was
I'm going with the scumbags, the ASLAF Union, who want to destroy all of our travel plans. Damn them. But thank you to my superstar panel. They were great tonight, weren't they? Carol McGiffin, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, thank you for your company all week. The Coronation Countdown continues. It's a bank holiday on Monday, but don't worry, I am here from 9 p.m. Headliners next. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the